Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and recently Pokemon revealed that, through, I believe, a trademark, so this isn't exactly official, but Mega Pokemon are the start of a new block, which is really interesting. This isn't like the start of a new year, so it's something they're doing a little differently than they have within recent Pokemon TCG history, which is, I guess, interesting. It's certainly different and unique. I don't know if it's good or bad. Honestly, it might just be confusing. But they will be in this year, Mega Pokemon. We saw Mega Lucario EX and Mega Gardevoir EX, though, and they might be in the game for 1.5 years. That would kind of make sense. But anyways, these two cards, I talked about them some, and they are kind of boring, to be honest, and they're not super strong. They're not super weak. Like their power level is a little low. But say I'm going to be talking about five three prize Pokemon that I think are really interesting that we could see aspects of come back and would really add to the game, and things that we need to see for these cards to be interesting because well, let's just hop into the first one, which is Inteleon VMAX. And there were three prize Pokemon before. These, obviously, that we'll be looking at today are all three prizers. A lot of them didn't really have abilities that allowed for support. None of the tag teams did, and only a handful of the VMAXs did. I think the best support VMAX is actually Umbreon VMAX, which is ability, it's on play evolution. And by the way, the VMAXs are equivalent to stage ones. We have confirmed Mega Evolution stage ones, which, by the way, evolve. There are three prizes that evolve from as a stage one, just a basic single prizer. And then, like, Gardevoir EX evolves from regular, or Mega Gardevoir EX evolves from Curlia, which is the same Pokemon. And regular Gardevoir EX evolves from. I presume that they're going to be basic Megas, which is kind of weird, but I think that would happen in the game. And I'm kind of going off of that assumption. If there aren't these ideas that I'm going to talk about for some basics, though, could just be applied to the evolutions. But, the power level that's what we're looking at for the different stages. And I don't think power creep is a major factor. It is somewhat meaningful, though. Anyways, Inteleon VMAX is the first card here, and a lot of them didn't have good abilities, but Umbreon VMAX did. It's on play Gust, which is the same as the Dubs Hop, or no, Hops Double. I mixed it up. But yeah, that's the same. So I figured putting that, saying we need this back, is kind of stupid because it's back, or it will be back in like 2 weeks or something internationally, maybe three, I guess. So Inteleon VMAX is a bit different. It has its ability, which says you discard a basic water from your hand, and then you do 20 damage to 2 your opponent's benched Pokemon through damage counters. And your attacks are Gmax Spiral here for 2 energy, 1 water, 1 colorless. 70, you can return energy from this Pokemon to your hand. You do 70 more. This card was solid, like a solid competitive card, not bad at all. Not amazingly good either. It was solid. It was very balanced. I think if you asked people, they'd say that. There are some annoyances where you could like heal it up, and so it could be a little annoying, but it's not bad. In terms of being, unfun to play against, I think it was cool. The spread didn't pick apart your opponents completely. I really enjoyed this card. It's not a card that stand out super cool and super awesome, super amazing, but it is a fun card. It has some depth and it feels really fair and has this ability. I think the number one thing I want to see on the three prizes, I want to see them balanced and generally fun and unique, but I think the best way to make them fun and unique is through use of abilities that are potentially only support Pokemon. And I don't want to see most of them just sitting on the bench all the time, but that is cool. And that's where, a lot of Pokemon are. If you just take a look at, let's say, just a bunch of random decks, like, say, this Regidrago V-Star deck. That was, say, in this recent tournament. We see Regidrago. I probably should have picked a better example. Actually, because Dragon Ball EX, is that an attacker? I don't really know, but anyways, this tournament won by Cloth. Trapghost EX, you have Badoo, Trapghost EX, and Cloth, which are definitely attackers. And then you have Brute Bonnet, which is support, Fezandipity EX support, Rangroot V, which is support, Lumineon V support, Latias EX, and Squawkabilly EX support. I don't remember if I duplicated any. Winnie Hisu and Sneasler, Pachamon, and Munkidori all do damage through use of abilities. They are support. They're not attackers. They do damage, just like Inteleon VMAX. So you see most of the Pokemon in the deck are support Pokemon. only 5 attackers. So you need these interesting support Pokemon because they're the bulk of the Pokemon that you want to be playing. And this also is a Pokemon. Italian VMAX can't really like slot into any deck, but I want to see some more versatile 3 prizers, and that's what honestly is going to be a theme throughout this video. The next card here is Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX was, well, if you just saw all the decks that the Rapid Strike Inteleon VMAX was played in, there were actually 2 Inteleon VMAXs, if any of you are wondering or potentially confused by that. So this is the Rapid Strike one, the Gigantamax, or, no, the Gigantamax one as well. But it was really just played with Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, played a little bit with without that, played separately. But Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX was, again, the other part of that deck. It was also played in different things. Again, played a lot together, but you can see it with some different things earlier on, and it was really good. Definitely a better card. This card is probably on the borderline of too good. It is a Pokemon that hits your opponent's bench. Notably, bench barrier is not. It wasn't in the game for its entire time that Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX was in standard, but most of the time it was. And so by the time Megas come out, we will have the bench barrier or bench protecting card of Shaman, so you could have these bench attacking effects. This is, or bench damage attacks, as opposed to effects in Dragapult EX, which would go through Shaman, which is actually a little scary. But anyways, Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX has 2 attacks. The second one is 120 to your opponent's Pokemon. A really solid spread attack. Fighting, colorless. I didn't actually mention this with Italian VMAX, really. Just kind of alluded, or like, this is what made the healing stuff work, but you had the energy, Rapid Strike energy, which is 2 energy of water fighting, which is most of the energy costs of Rapid Strike Pokemon, and it allowed them to just be paid for with 1 energy attachment. So this is essentially 2 energies, as opposed to just as opposed to 3, and you can use certain things to get the energy on easier. Charizard EX, that was not super common, but a deck like this plays Melanie, which could get the extra energy on. I think that might have been the main way. Blaziken VMAX and honestly, I don't know all the different ways. There are a bunch of different ones. I think Galarian Moltres V was also played. So there's a bunch of different cool ways to power this up, but it's not, anything crazy, and not the reason why this card is super cool. The reason that this card is fun. This first stack here is for 1 fighting. You do 30, but you do 150 if you switch into the active. This has synergy with a lot of the Rapid Strike stuff. That is actually really cool, and part of what made this card fun. I think people I don't know. I feel like this card's cool. It was kind of annoying to go against if you didn't have Manaphy, or if you weren't able to get into play, or yeah, Manaphy / Mew. They're like the same. And then your opponent could theoretically knock you out. And there's some stuff that could go really wrong and be really annoying for you theoretically, but there was counterplay to this, and also most of the metagame was multi-prizers, so it's not like your opponent would be wiping out all your attackers before they're set up, so that is a bit of a different mechanic. Actually, as well, with again, these evolve from single prizers, so again, spread is a little different here, but spread is interesting. This first attack's interesting, and they're just 2 different attacks that do different things, which is cool to see. 2 attacks that any deck playing this Pokemon would use either attack. It might lean way more, specifically the second attack is really strong. In standard, it would be okay today, especially without the Rapid Strike energy, but still have some really powerful options. But the first attack is definitely something usable in any deck. I mean, it has to be usable. If you can use the second one, you can use the first one. And it's cool. It enabled some kind of like middle plays between your consecutive GMAX Rapid Floor attacks. You can use Gale Thrust, and it was just really interesting in terms of the dynamics of the game. Right now in Standard, there are definitely some Pokemon or decks that use different attackers, but there aren't too many Pokemon with multiple different good attacks. And that is the same reason why I have the next Pokemon. It's like 4 cards. This is V-Unions. The V-Unions were not good. Like, they're objectively weak. Looking at them, they are 3 prizers. They had 300 HP, or not, like 310 through 20, somewhere around that range. But they're really difficult to get into play. You need all 4 in the discard pile. They also all have the same name, so you have 4 cards. If you prized any, it's not getting into play. There are kind of ways to grab it out of the prizes, but they're not amazing by any means. And then on top of that, you also have the fact that they're not super strong. These were probably they're on a similar level to the VMAXs. Their issues were a little lower. You could argue they're a little stronger, but it's not anything crazy. So they're like VMAXs, but they're way harder to get into play. And they still give the same number of prizes. You can't even recover it either once it gets knocked out for the first time. So overall, these were really hard to play. Mewtwo Reunion, though, did end up seeing play. It saw play in, oh wow, that's not loading. It saw play within Gardevoir EX some, and then mostly as a control card or like a mix and match. But it had four different attacks here. All the V units did have an attack called Union Gain to accelerate energies. This attack is pretty mediocre. I'm not going to talk this attack up at all. It did have a purpose within the deck and it was important specifically for the control-based decks. But I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about these new megas and saying that because they will have energy acceleration first attacks. That's not a mega. So they had these attacks. I was not a fan of them, and I would not really be a massive fan if this returned. I mean, the V-Unions as a whole were really weird. However, there are four different attacks, which is really cool. Greninja V-Union had three abilities and four attacks. The abilities were pretty boring, to be honest. I don't even remember what they were. The one let you look at your opponent's hand. This one stopped effects of items from hitting you, and then the one was stopped poisoned. Yeah, so they're pretty niche. Mewtwo Venian did have an ability that said it affects preventive effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon. This is like instant knockouts is the big one you want to be preventing. This was definitely a thing at the time in when this was in format, some of it. So that's really good. And then you also have your attack here, which is 300 for 4, which is solid. Um, is again, it's not absolutely insane. It's kind of like Pikachu EX. It's a little easier to power up, but not drastically easier. Assuming it's on like the same stage. It's not on the same stage. It's actually way harder to power up because it's really hard to get this into play. But anyways, this is an interesting attack and just a big damage attack. We got Explosion for 3, put 16 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. And then we had Super Regeneration. This is the attack that I think this card's known for 3 energy, 2 which are psychic. You do 200, or you heal 200 from it. There we go. This allowed you to tank, essentially infinitely tank Pokemon's attacks that were doing 200 or less, which was, I mean, then you just essentially win, assuming you didn't deck yourself out, assuming that your opponent decked out first, or I guess you could end up tying if both of you never decked out. But anyways, Mewtwo V Union was really good for all of its attacks. Side Explosion could be really good even in the control-based decks. And Final Burn as well. Final Burn definitely had a place within the deck, especially the Gardevoir-based lists. But overall, you had 3 different really interesting attacks. I mean, Union Gain also is interesting. It's not like you're deciding whether you're going to Union Gain or Super Regeneration, or like if you're going to Union Gain or Side Explosion. Union Gain, if you need it, you need it, because you can't use the other attacks. But if you can, you're just going to use those. But you have a lot of different attacks. I'm not necessarily expecting 4 attacks on a Pokemon, but I would love to see 3 attacks or 2 attacks and an ability. And this is obviously similar to Rap Strikers through VMAX and the fact that you have multiple good attacks. These megas, they look okay. They like Mega Lucario EX has 2 attacks that are okay. Again, these are just like example tag teams, or no, example megas. There we go. Example 3 prizes. So these will be actual cards, but ideally we'll have some more that are a bit more interesting, like a lot more interesting to be honest. But they're starting to show signs that they're gonna have 2 usable attacks. Hopefully, again, the 3 attacks of Pokemon is fun. It's not something that should be happening all the time, or 2 attacks and an ability, or even 2 abilities. I don't think we've seen 2 abilities on a Pokemon ever. Well, okay, we've seen it on the Reunion. I literally just showed you, but on the same card, I'm gonna be forgetting, and I think there's one with like 2 Poke Powers. But anyways, this is something I really want to see. Now we're going to talk about another card, which is also Mewtwo. Well, it's Mewtwo and it's also Mew, and it's a GX. It's a tag team. It's a basic. It has a GX attack. This attack does not really matter at all. It could not have that GX attack and be essentially as good. It had use cases, but anyways, you had this ability Perfection. It says this Pokemon can use attacks of any GX or EX on your bench or on your discard pile. This is capital EX, which is the like middle era of EXs, the ones that are the like black and white and X and Y era. This never really overlapped in standard, and expanded did, but the attacks weren't super great. Ironically, the most interesting ones were from the previous era of Megas, which were completely different, hard to get into play, and the idea is you discard them and just copy the attacks. But the more interesting attacks or the ones that were used more certainly were the ones in standard. I'm going to open a random list here. This one plays some weird stuff here. but we see a bunch of different GXs, which you have an attacker copying. Earlier, I pulled up Reggie Draco V-Star. You have a few different attackers. You have like Dragapult EX, which is really good. Um, and that's like really your main attacker. Um, it's nothing again super interesting though, but it's cool, definitely fun. A little annoying to play against. Then you Guillotine V-Star, straight damage, nothing crazy there. Does lose energy. Huram also loses energy. It's a sweeping finisher style attack. And then we have Hisuian Gudra V-Star for a little bit of tankiness. Nothing too crazy going on here, but it is interesting. And you have four different attacking options that are all solid and have their use cases. And it's not always clear what the best option is. However, Mewtwo GX, you have so many more. You do have weird options like Dedenne GX to support Pokemon you could then copy, and you'd use this. Is it good? No, but you'd use it. I've used it, and a lot of people have used it. Not because it's good, but because it's an option, and this option's here. You don't have the option to attack. Well, with like Latias EX, not that you really want to. I guess you could attack with literally every other basic Pokemon in the deck. Kyurem's hard, but you could attack with Fezandipiti EX or Mew EX if you wanted to, though it's not common. But here you have so many different attacking options. You have all these stage twos, and these are Pokemon that you wouldn't really be able to play normally that had moderately interesting attacks. Like Greninja GX, that one's a little weird and a little niche, but you have like no, actually, some more Megas. We have Mega Lopunny and Jigglypuff and Mega Sableye and Tyranitar for some interesting attacking options. Freshman Charizard, Magneto and Guzzlord, and you have Zero Orjax. You have a bunch of different attacking options that are really interesting. You have a really cool toolbox style deck. This is definitely my favorite style of toolbox style deck as well. You copy the Pokemon. You need the energy though to use them. It's just your ability allowing you to use them. So this is different than Regidrago V-Star, where for Regidrago V-Star you just need two grass and a fire. There's less creativity with the deck building. There aren't really that many different ways to build Regidrago. You could use different forms of energy acceleration to get a slightly different deck, but this is definitely the best one. And on top of that, it's definitely like then the most interesting because you want to be able to attack. That's what makes the deck cool. And there aren't really different attackers. There are some. There's like a Lone Executor EX. There's, I mean, honestly, Dragon type. I mean, it just has the least number of cards as well, so that limits it. But overall, there's some that are cool, but it's not an attacker, or it's not, a Pokemon which is super interesting in the same level as Mewtwo and Mew, where you have different attacks. Some are stronger, but are more expensive, so you have this payoff. But no, with Regidrago, you just want to use the best attack, the one that's strongest by either being some are from stage 2, some are just really expensive, but the attack cost doesn't matter here. Mewtwo Mew is really cool. It's a card that I've heard essentially only positives from. I saw some people saying like, "Oh, three prices are bad," but that's about it. Three prizes as well. They're fun. Then the last card is it's Arceus and Alga and Palkia GX. This is a card I don't want reprinted in the same exact way that it was printed in the first place. This was definitely a bit of a mistake to be printed. However, there is some really cool stuff about this Pokemon. It has the attack ultimate rate for water, metal, and colorless. Does 150. You search your deck for up to 3 basic energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon any way you like, then you shuffle your deck. This is an interesting attack, and we'll talk about that later. However, the second attack is Alter Creation. This attack's actually really long as well. Tag team attacks, GX attacks, I didn't talk about it with Mewtwo Mew because it didn't matter, but it's for 1 metal, you do 30 damage for the rest of the game. All your Pokemon's attacks, 2 your points active, so it's not like super broken with spread. It's not good with spread. And then your secondary effect is if you have a water in addition to the metal, so 2 energies here, which isn't super hard to do, but it's harder than just the metal. Then for the rest of the game, whenever you take a knockout, you take an extra prize. This is like super broken. Yeah, there's not really too much to say about this attack other than, well, no, there is more, but it is super broken. It's too good. This card's like sometimes regarded as one of the best cards ever. In my spoilers for my Family Feud video that I released like a week ago or so, I believe people voted as the most broken card of all time. This card, or like the best, or something like that. It's not. I mean, like there are cards that are better. Boss's Orders is better than this, right? I think there's not really. It's a card, people wouldn't say like, oh, Bosses, that's like super broken. I mean, it's played all the time and has held up through a long period of time, and it's really good. But anyways, Arceus and Palkia is still really, really strong. It didn't it wasn't like dominating the meta completely. However, it did really shut down single prizes, which is an issue. However, it is really strong, but it's not really like it's not going to win you the game. Alter Creation does not just win you the game. It doesn't do any damage. I mean, it doesn't actually do anything for to your opponent. It helps you. It's really strong for setting up. It's actually a setup attack that we really don't see setup attacks almost ever. And attacks like this that are like change the entire game are rare. We've seen some on V-Star powers, I think. I can't think of any others outside of that. And the V-Star powers were effects on the Pokemon themselves, but like gave them abilities. But yeah, I wish we did see some more setup attacks like this. That's really cool. And then on top of that, you also have the attack Ultimate Ray. Ultimate Ray is not super strong. It's a 150 for 3, boosts up to 180, and taking extra prize is really insane. And yes, it did push out single prize, and Ultimate Ray plus Alter Creation really was enough to do that. It ended up having more to the deck than just that, but regardless, ADP definitely had Ultimate Ray, which is a really awesome part of it to me, which I thought was cool because it allowed you to power up lots of different things. ADP was mostly played with Zacian V. One thing to say about this was during a really weird period of the Pokemon TCG in which certain world events happened, I guess is what I'll say. But yeah, this was played in some different things. Yeah, these tournament results don't really reflect what this card was like, to be honest. I think it was much more heavily focused on Zacian V with ADP. Zacian V is just a Pokemon. It's honestly not super interesting. Its ability is actually like Rotom V's. It's a little bit better, which is kind of crazy. And then it had an attack. It was like a good attacker, plus it was Rotom V's ability, which is kind of insane looking back on it. It did have 2 retreat, but like that was not an issue as you'd be playing a bunch of switch cards and also Air Balloon, which is like another switch card. It's Vescoid, but for 2, so it worked on Zacian V. So that didn't really matter, but this was the main build. It was fine, but you also had some other builds. You had ADP with Moltres, Galarian Moltres V. This was definitely a build that was played. You had Galarian Moltres V, which is a Darkness Pokemon, which used Darkness Energy. You had Galarian Zapdos V, which was a Fighting Pokemon using Fighting Energy. Here we do see Aurora Energy to pay that, but you definitely see a basic Fighting from time to time. You had Metal Energy and Water Energy for Arceus and Dialga and Palkia GX, and this is where things really get cool because it is a Dragon type, and I want to see really cool dragon Pokemon. Dragon Pokemon, there's 3 in the game right now that I say are really good. Regidrago V-Star, which is rotating and has already rotated in Japan, which does have versatility, but we're just talking about it. And I mean, the energy gets only enemy grass and fire, and the attackers aren't really going to be embracing those types. You have Teal Masogo Pontiacs, which is not an attacker, it's just a way to power yourself up. And you also had Radiant Charizard as a fire Pokemon as an attacking option, which is fine. I mean, it's cool, but that's one other Pokemon, but that's a little different. It's embracing the versatility within Regidrago V-Star itself, not within the Dragon type, playing different energy types. Then you have Dragapult EX. Dragapult EX could have some different attacker or different Pokemon of different types to attack with theoretically, like like Radiant Alakazam or Radiant Charizard, I guess is what I'd say there, but that's not like really common. You can see like Charizard EX, I guess. There's Gholdengo EX post rotation, and there's a few different things. These aren't like that common though, to be honest. So Dragon Ball EX doesn't really take advantage of having like versatile deck building through the Dragon type. And then lastly, there is Raging Bolt EX. Where's that? Here it is. Which does actually have a third type thrown in with Teal Masogo EX, but again, you're just really attacking with Raging Bolt EX. Maybe with some other ancient Pokemon though, we see Koraidon and Slitherwing, which is cool enough, but you don't have the variability of the, and it's like being scratched the surface of it, but you don't see quite the same level as ADP here, where we see these like wide variety of different energy types, especially because it can accelerate any type of energy to any Pokemon, which is really good. And then we see like even Pokemon, literally any Pokemon in this deck can attack. Aurora Energy is really good. You can accelerate it. It's only basic energy to be accelerated, but this allows you to attack with the Dene GX. I said you would attack with it theoretically. Sometimes in Mewtwo and Mew, you could theoretically attack with it here too, though that's not great. But you could pair this with, there's some weird expanded stuff and older standard stuff as well. We compare it with Spiritomb, which is darkness again, like Galarian Moltres V. There was the Reshiram and Zekrom, which is a card that I got a lot of hype, was pretty bad, but still, they have some interesting stuff. This is expanded format, so we got some weird stuff going on with like Double Dragon. This doesn't play any fire, or no, it doesn't play any water or metal energy. It only plays dragon, and then you have fire and lightning for your other attacker, which is kind of weird. And then we see ADP with Keldeo. I'd say ADP with Keldeo and then ADP with Galarian Moltres V, or Keldeo GX and Galarian Moltres V are the bookends of ADP. You had some different stuff going on in the middle. Keldeo GX was a really versatile Pokemon, embracing the water type. So two of the main Pokemon, Keldeo GX and Zacian V, are just of the two different types. This isn't something you'd see of a Pokemon of just one type. Like, well, Charizard EX is kind of a weird example because it's not fire, it's darkness, but which is kind of cool about the Terras, but ultimately not super meaningful. But anyways, that's certainly for another video, which I've talked about Terras before. But you have, your attacking options that you can choose. You get to like do Radiant Charizard, but you can't stick in some Pokemon of some other type. So, or not super easily. We do see it some, but Charizard DX's design, I think, is cool enough, but ADP is a card that is interesting to play with. It's not super great to play against, I will admit that, and as I said, I don't want this card back in the way that it was, but I want some cool Dragon Pokemon or some cool Pokemon that opens up a lot of different options. That's really the main theme here. And I'm nervous that Pokemon won't do that. If we look at the first year of VMAX cards, if we look at I think it's the D block, um, and then we look at the VMAXs, we can see a bunch of VMAXs and look at what they have. And in these cards, we see, oh wow, these are interesting arts here. We see one attack on most of them, very few abilities. And most of the abilities are really boring as well. Like Orbital V or VMAX had an interesting ability, I guess. Eternatus VMAX's ability was, I guess, interesting, but it was really just part of its core design, and it wasn't really something that you think about. And then Dreadnought VMAX, something I've never played. Actually, I might have played against this, but it's not interesting. But anyways, these Pokemon weren't super interesting. I want to see Pokemon out the gate come out with really cool megas, especially if we only get 2 sets of them. It's really important, but if they do 6 sets, 6 main sets, then it is still, I want to see cool cards from the set. Inteleon VMAX, Dragon Ball VMAX, even like Malamar VMAX, Colossal VMAX, like these are kind of cool. Sojourner VMAX had some utility. Not fun. Just like say that this is obviously these are my thoughts, so it's all kind of subjective. But now this deck is so not fun to play against. Actually, probably my least favorite deck ever to play against. This or Dracozolt VMAX. But you had some interesting options here, but nothing as cool as like some of the later VMAXs. And I think the tag teams had a bunch of depth, they had a bunch of attacks, and that was pretty cool. But anyways, tell me down below what types of things you want to see from the 3 prizers. And if you want to see ADP back, I think I know the answer to that. But I hope you enjoyed. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the ball, all that good stuff. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.